Here's a gauge panel. Again, this is the second time around. We swapped out the autometer gauges to Stuart Warner. The autometer gauges were meant for my 600, and I never really, at the time I bought them, many years ago, that the autometer gauges were allotted to that project. And this one, these Stuart Warners, I had a oil pressure gauge for a while now. I don't know where it came from, but I went on eBay to look at some of these, the chrome bezel gauges, and I happened to find a water temp gauge for, I don't know, I think it was like $20 and free shipping. So I said, well, let me see what that would look like. So for $20 I got the water temperature gauge, and it came with all the accessories, except the box was a bit messed up, so that's why normally they're probably a $60 gauge or something like that. So the water temp gauge is a electric one. The manual ones, mechanical gauges for water temp, usually work on a car where the engine isn't as far away from the gauge. They have like a capillary tube that they use, and I don't know if they'd ever, I don't know, I guess you can get I don't know how that would work. You get an extension or what you would do to run something all the way back to the engine. So I chose the electric because it's pretty easy and pretty stable, reliable. The oil pressure is a mechanical unit. I decided on mechanical, of course, but this time is because I had one already in stock. But because of the electric gauges that Fiat had, the sending unit would always rupture. The baffle in it was a rubber thing, and it would always, get a hole in it or go bad, and the gauge would always, misread. And I don't like that big chunk hanging off the side of the block. So I decided, well, let me just go with what people believe is more reliable and more accurate, which is the manual mechanical gauge, where you have to use another small tube with oil in it to get it to read. So I don't mind that much. I like the mechanical aspect of the oil pressure. I don't care too much about the water. I think sending, I don't know, it just feels okay, better to me to have the sending unit on a water temp gauge is so tiny. It's just like looks like a bolt. So it's completely hidden in the engine bay, pretty much. I mounted mine on the thermostat housing because the thermostat area is where you want to mount a water temp gauge, because that'll tell you exactly when your thermostat is opening and closing. If I haven't played around with that much yet on this gauge because I don't have the car out running about. But that's a story on these gauges. Apparently the black face is supposed to maybe look or match with the rest of the car. I mean, the other gauges, I suppose. The apparent, maybe some, I don't know, some Italian gauges would have been better, or German, to make it, more fitting for a European car than American Stuart Warner gauges. But Stuart Warner it is, mainly because some of the European gauges that I saw, like videos maybe, the sweep isn't as much. You can see the oil here is like really, I mean, it'll measure down to five not PSI, but yeah, pounds per square inch. So that's really low. Most other ones, the sweep isn't as much, and it won't measure from sweep, meaning it might go like 5 to, it won't measure 5, it'll measure 20 to, 65 or something like that. It's just not, the dial isn't as big. It's a lot, like half a dial or something like that. Or they don't even have numbers on them. They're just indicators. The water temp is probably ample the way it is. Normally it stays under, I don't know, around between 150 and 190, just idling in the garage. In my wiring issues here with the gauge and some other things, I had this thing, I don't know, I guess the water pump wasn't working, and it went up over 230. And yeah, I've had this car overheated many times. The reason it tolerates all that, well, at least I hope it still is because I've retorqued the head. I don't know, I probably think it's on the 4th retorque. I retorque my heads quite a bit, especially after the first run. I might, run the car for an hour, maybe something like, 20 minutes even, and then I'll retorque the head, and it's just amazing how much torque they take it to, again. In a retorque practice, I also loosen the bolt like a turn, and then I'll put a full torque on it again. And I usually mark them with a Sharpie, and I can tell how much more they turned just for my knowledge that I feel like I actually, when it did the retorque, it would actually take up more thread on the rod, on the head bolts. So anyways, we ventured off from retorquing heads and gauges, but hey, it's as much information as we can disseminate, the better, right? So that should be